Hey everyone, welcome to the fourth Android Study Jam in the collaboration of DSC BVP and DSC JIIT. I am Naman and I will be your co-host today along with Ashutosh for the session. Now I would like to introduce our speaker. Nicola is a speaker. Nicola Corti is a Google developer expert for Kotlin. He is working as an Android infrastructure engineer at Spotify. He has been working with the language for a long time and is a maintainer of several open source libraries and tools. Furthermore, he is an active member of the developer community and is a speaker at several international conferences throughout Europe. Now I would like to hand over to Ashutosh.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashutosh Agarwal, Mobile Development Lead and Android Facilitator for DSC JIT 128. Now let's have a look at the today's agenda. Today we gonna know the roadmap to the Android development, what core concepts and topics we need to cover, what should be the sequence in which we have to cover these, and what are the best practices that are used in industry for developing mobile applications. And later we have a Q&A session where our guest Nicola sir will answer all the questions that you have. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So I will now request Nicola sir to continue our today's session. Over to you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. So let me
Thank
present and then we can get started. Are you able to see my slides? Give me a confirmation. Well, I guess so because, yeah, you see my desktop. So, okay. So, hi everyone. Thank you very much for being connected today. We're going to talk about the Android developer roadmap in 2021. So let me just briefly introduce myself. My name is Nicola Corti. I work as Android infrastructure engineer at Spotify, and I'm also a Google developer expert for Kotlin. You can find me online at twitter.com/cortinico and also on github.com/cortinico. I'm really active on GitHub, a lot of open source development. I have a couple of projects. And if you're looking for doing some open source work, make sure you connect with me. Also, I happen to write some blog posts. So I have a blog at corti.com. I also recently launched a podcast called The Developers Bakery. We talk about open source development and Android development. If you want to get into that, make sure you check it out. And without further ado, let's deep dive into the Android developer roadmap. So I started doing Android nearly 10 years ago. No, exactly 10 years ago in 2011. And the landscape was so different than today. And a lot of things changed. And I can totally understand how it's definitely complicated to navigate this landscape and understand what I should learn first and what is more important to learn rather than less important and I can postpone. So for this reason, there are a lot of interesting projects and tools that will help you understanding what is crucial to learn first. Today, I will walk you through this project. It's called Android Developer Roadmap. You can find it on GitHub. And the project is basically a repository that contains just one image. And this image is substantially like a big map with a lot of steps that you need to follow. And the idea behind this map, you will find the sequence of things that you need to learn in an ordered manner. So today we'll walk you through this image and we can discover that together. So at the beginning, the first thing that this map starts with is the programming language. So there are two alternatives if you want to do development, either Kotlin or Java. So my personal unbiased point of view is definitely to use Kotlin. If you are starting to do Android development in 2021, there is no reason to do that in Java. If you already know Java, yes, you can do Android development with that. You don't need to learn a new language, but learning Kotlin will open you to bigger opportunities. A lot of libraries that are used nowadays in the Android development are Kotlin only, or they anyway they provide better support for Kotlin APIs. So I really suggest you take a look at Kotlin. Kotlin is really easy to learn. There is a lot of material out there. And also, learning Kotlin will open opportunities to work with Kotlin multi-platform. So you will be able to share your code also with iOS, with web, with native targets, and so on. So there are opportunities for Kotlin in the future. And specifically after Google announced that Kotlin will be their preferred programming language for Android, I see no real reason to just use Java for Android development right now. Make sure you take a look at Kotlin. So the next thing that you should look at are build tools, like your workbox. So as you start working like on a bricolage project, you want to make sure that all of your like hammers and saw and tools are working fine. And that's the same thing when you do Android development. You want to make sure that all the tools you have, you know them and you know how they work. Specifically on Android, the tools you need to understand well are Android Studio and all the related tools like ADB, how to run emulators, how the debugger works, the SDK, and so on. So really spend some time to familiarize yourself with the environment. I know there are a lot of tools also over there. You don't need to learn them all, but sometimes spending some hours or days learning those tools will help you so much as you're learning libraries and APIs, because this will give you capability to fully understand and debug and interact with your application better. Then the next thing that I really suggest to take a look at, and this is I would say the first topic when you learn Android development, is the manifest. So the manifest is basically sort of like the ID card of your application. It's an XML file that gets bundled inside a final APK or app bundle and contains all the public information for your application, like, for example, which permissions are requested, components are inside your app. This is crucial because this is the document that is analyzed by Play Store to fully understand what app can be deployed and which languages are supported and so on. So I would say that's the entry point to Android development. But then there are like a lot of things to actually build an Android app. Generally, Android, we talk about the main Android component. There are either an activity, a service, intent, broadcast receiver, and so on. There are several, but I really suggest you to take a look at those two. Activity specifically represents something that has a UI. So whatever has a screen that is shown to the user, that's basically an activity. I'm oversimplifying a bit, but whenever you open an app and a screen is displayed to you, that's basically an activity. And that's what you want to create when you want to start your application and show something to your users. A service instead allows you to run something in the background. So if you have an application that every X minutes downloads new news or new images or does stuff in the background without showing anything to the user, you will need to look into services. Another component that I think is really crucial for the Android ecosystem, and then it's fundamental to understand, is intent. One beauty of the Android operating system is that the user is free to pick any application they want to do the task they prefer. So, for example, you install the camera app that you wish, and if you are creating an application that needs to interact with camera, you want to offer the user the possibility to pick which camera app to use, because maybe they installed a fancy camera and they want to use that. So this mechanism works thanks to intent. So the intent is a way on Android to make two applications, or even the same application, talk with each other. So it's crucial to understand how the application in an Android operating system interacts. Then we go ahead and we end up in the user interface topic. And yes, there are a lot of things. You see that the map here grows and grows. I will briefly touch those bigger like part of the tree, but I will not deep dive into all of those. Specifically, you need to learn a little bit about how the resource system works on Android. So how strings for different languages are resolved, how layouts are resolved, how it works to have a device in rather than in landscape. Then it's crucial also to learn some UI components, specifically buttons, text view, edit text, whatever. Like you want your user to interact with your application in an elegant way. So you need to have like UI controls and components that your user can click and interact with. Specifically, I also suggest to take a look at image loaders. Those are crucial to Those are crucial to load images. If, for example, your app needs to load images from the web, you need to take a look at libraries like Picasso, Glide, Fresco, or Coil that are great for loading image asynchronously and having nice effects on your images. Then I also suggest you take a look at Recycler View. So the vast majority of Androids are basically lists of stuff. So you should be able to just like scroll down and see items in your list. And you want those to be efficient. For this reason, Android offered a tool called Recycler View that makes sure that lists are buffer smooth, like they're really efficient to scroll. So you will definitely need to implement a Recycler View in your life sooner or later. Then we move over to fragments. Fragments are also a crucial point of the Android ecosystem because they allow you to reuse UI. So you will have to touch them somehow. And layouts. So layouts are more like a way to compose UI components. So for example, I like to mention the linear layout. That is the simplest one. And it's basically like a way to organize components one on top of the other, or either horizontally or vertically. And the constraint layout. Constraint layout is one of the most up-to-date, like one of the most recent layout. It's really powerful and allows you to display the components as you wish on your screen. So really take a look at that. There are way more, but really with linear layout and constraint layout, you basically can do all the UI you want. Then, yeah, there is more. There is way more. Tools, snack bar, dialogues. Really, like doing UI on Android is, we could say it's complicated because there is a lot of components to understand, but it's also really powerful. You can really do a lot. And also, I really suggest to take a look at accessibility. I know this might not be your first topic, and if you're learning, you probably want to skip it. That's totally fine. But if you're developing an Android app, make sure you take a look at accessibility. So you build an application that everyone can use. That's a big topic. There is a lot of content online. So make sure you spend some time on that. Then we move over to the storage. So if you're building an application, you also want to make sure that the user is able to store some information like, I don't know, maybe you downloaded something from the internet and you want that to be cached locally on the device, or you just want to store the user credential because you don't want the user to relog in every time. Again, there are like a lot of ways to do that. And if you want to achieve any kind of consistency, you will have to look at solutions like shared preferences, databases, or file storage. The next point, this is a bit far down. Some people will argue that this should have been earlier in the roadmap, but I think it's probably a nice place over here. And it's about the architecture. So far, like if you just use all the things you learned till here, you want to write like a simple app with some screens, and that will probably work. But as soon as your app grows, like you want to add more capabilities and you want to make like a fully production ready app, you will notice that your code starts to smell a bit. Like you will have logic inside activity code, and that's really hard to test, and so on. So for this reason, you need to look into architectures. There are a lot of patterns. You will find them here in the presentation group. And those are like MVVM, MVP, MVI, MVC, and so on. And those are helpful because they force you to organize your code in a specific way that is designed to help you testability and also to organize your code in a structured way. That's fundamental because if you want your app to scale and if you want to have a bigger working application, you definitely need to follow architecture. Then you also want to look into dependency injection. Again, that's a little bit more advanced. So if you're starting Android development, you might overlook this one. But as your app grows, there are a lot of dependencies, a lot of things that are needed for your application to work. So the HTTP client and the database driver and a lot of other objects that are needed. And you want to use a tool, a dependency injection framework like Dagger, Ilt, Coin, whatsoever, that will help you inject those dependencies. And they will basically help you having a big spaghetti code of dependencies and just not be able to handle your application anymore. Then I mentioned a little bit of testing, but again, when you start doing Android development, you will just place buttons and items on a layout and see if that works. That's fine. But then at a certain point, you want your application to go on the market and you want to make sure that it works fine. So you need to write tests for that, because when your code base grows, you want to make sure that if anything gets changed, everything still works fine. So your application is still working. So for this, you need to learn how to write tests, either unit tests, but also integration tests and espresso tests and so on. And also, I'm a big fan of linters. Like linters are tools that analyze your code base and they will tell you if there are bugs or problems in your Android app. So again, these are a bit more advanced, but they can help you save a lot of time and they can clean up your code a lot. Okay, then we move over. Build configuration. So your application will most likely be built with Gradle. I personally would have moved this build configuration block on top next to Android Studio, but I can also understand that Gradle is a bit complicated to learn, so you don't really need to learn it at the beginning. But just to let you know, Gradle is basically a tool that allows you to build your app and add dependencies on libraries and define how your application should be built. So you might not need to learn it at the beginning, but if you want to go a little bit like more advanced, that's one topic that is crucial to work in the Android ecosystem. Specifically, if you're interested in doing infrastructure, as I do, then knowing Gradle is crucial. Like you need to know how the build system works and how to plug in logic into it. Then we continue. Thread handling. That's also a really fundamental point, because on your Android app, there will be either one or multiple threads running, and that's up to you to manage them. So for example, when you do a network request, you want the network request to happen in the background because you don't want to block the user. You don't want to block the application because there is a network request that is waiting for the response. So you need to understand how the threading model works on Android. I need to use tools like, specifically, I would suggest you take a look at Coroutines or RxJava. It's not mentioned here, but It's used broadly nowadays on Android to do threading. And again, this is a bit more advanced. You don't really need to learn it now, but as soon as you do a network call, and trust me, your application will do some sort of network call at a certain point. You will need to understand what it means to run something on a background thread. And so, yeah, we move over here. As I said, you will probably need to do a network call. So this doesn't mean just handling the threading, but also handling the HTTP request. Like, how do I actually do the HTTP request? So I want to mention a library called Retrofit. That is really great because it provides you an abstraction on REST. And it's great for doing network calls, really. Like, it's really elegant because you just define an interface, and this interface will be populated with the requests that you do. And also, you will probably need to interact with JSON. Like, you will get a JSON body, or I don't know, XML body or protobuf, whatsoever. But if it's JSON, and that's the most likely one, then you need to use a library to parse it. And personally, using a library like Moshi is the one I would recommend, but there are others like JSON, Jackson, Kotlin X serialization. There are really a lot of them. So make sure you take a look at which library to use for JSON converters, because you will definitely need one at a certain point. So the next step is this big chunk, Android Jetpack and Android components. So, architecture components. So if you do the Android code lab, you will find that those sort of suggested libraries are presented early on. Like, you'll probably start to learn what is a live data or what is a model really, really early on. That's because those are the suggested libraries written by Google to do Android development. And they're great. Like, they actually simplify a lot of the things that Android doesn't support out of the box. And they're a great tool. But what I want to mention here is that they are not crucial part of the Android SDK. And you could definitely do Android app without using them. Like, you're not supposed to use Room or Live Data or View Model or the paging library whatsoever to do Android development. Those are nice to have. They're really good. But yeah, you can do Android development without knowing them. So just so you know what Android Jetpack and architecture components are. And then there is a lot of other things. Really a lot. Google libraries, Firebase, security, sensors, location, content providers, and animation, app publishing, and so on. I want to stress just one thing. As part of the learning experience of becoming an Android engineer, I definitely recommend you take a look on how the app publishing works. So on how you publish your app to the store. And I think it's crucial in a way that you sort of like the end-to-end cycle of an Android app. And that's really valuable. Like, please spend some time and try to make a sample project or a hobby project and just push it on the Play Store, because then you fully understand how to make Android application from creating an empty project to actually reaching the Play Store. And yeah, the map is quite big. It's a lot of stuff, and you might feel overwhelmed. I totally understand. I'll be honest, I don't know all of those. Like, I know that they exist, but I don't know all of them in details. Because there are some things that you just don't touch every day, like handling sensors. So maybe if you work on a sensor-specific application, yeah, you will work with sensors every day, but you might just be in the situation where you don't deal with them, so you don't need to use them. But my suggestion here, just to wrap up, is keep on learning. Like, you're never arrived. It's not that if you learn all of those boxes, then you're like a senior Android engineer. It doesn't work this way. Like you need to continue improving and keep on learning, because there are a lot of things that are not even here on this map. So this roadmap is just like to give you an idea of what is more important to learn first, and to give you an order of the things you need to look into. But again, keep on learning, get in touch with experts, get in touch with the community, get in touch with other people that similarly to you are learning, and I'm pretty sure you will enjoy doing Android development. So now we have some time for running Q&A. But first, I want to say you good luck. If you want to become an Android engineer, really, best of luck. And thank you very much for listening. You can find me on Twitter as Cortinico and as on GitHub. And then I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. Very insightful session. So we have a bunch of questions with us. So
Okay.
Let's start off. So what are native app development and cross-platform app development? What to choose between them?
Yeah. Okay. So first let me clarify. So native app development is basically means developing Android or iOS app in the technology that was originally designed for it. So for Android, this will mean writing apps in Java or in Kotlin and using the APIs that the SDK is providing directly. For iOS, this will mean writing application in either Swift or in Objective-C. And cross-platform app development instead means using a framework that allows you to write application that can be deployed on multiple targets. So you write your application once in what could be like an intermediate language, like you could write it in JavaScript, or you could also write it in Kotlin, for example, with Kotlin multi-platform. But then use a framework like, as I said, Kotlin multi-platform that allows you to ship your application on multiple targets. I love also to mention Flutter because that's getting a lot of traction recently. That is again a framework, and for that you need to write your application in Dart, and that allows you to basically ship your Flutter app both on Android and on iOS, and I believe also on web, desktop, or I don't know which other targets are available nowadays on Flutter. But yeah.
Yeah. Moving ahead to our next question. As we know, Kotlin is the official language for Android development. What are other areas where we can use Kotlin?
Sure. So there are actually a lot of areas where Kotlin can be used, and that's also one of the reasons why I really suggest to take a look into that, because I think it opens to a lot of opportunities. So first, as I said, with multi-platform, you can write code that works both on Android and on iOS. Generally, what is suggested to do is that you have your business logic that is shared between Android and iOS, and then you have the UI code that is native, like platform-specific code. So you will have Android layouts, and you will use, I don't know, Swift UI or whatever UI framework you want on iOS. But with Kotlin, you can also go one step further, and for example, you can use Kotlin for backend development. So whenever you do backend development in Java, you can definitely rewrite that in Kotlin or use Kotlin specific frameworks for that. There is a lot of support also for Kotlin in the data science world. So if you do machine learning, if you do data analysis, there are a lot of tools and libraries over there. I personally use Kotlin a lot also for scripting. So if you have like bash scripts and so on, you can basically rewrite them in Kotlin, and that's really convenient, because bash is great, but I believe it's terrible for scripting. Like, it's really complicated to understand what a bash script is doing, while Kotlin is way more easier to understand and to read, more readable. So yeah, definitely there are a lot of barriers.
Thank you, sir, for the answer. Moving ahead, uh, yeah, as we know, you are an active open source contributor.
Yeah.
So tell us about open source. Why is it important, and what and how we can start it off? Yeah, over
Yeah.
to you, sir.
So I think open source is crucial as part of your career. Like I'm a big fan of calling open source as a career boost. So in my case, I got the opportunity. Like I'm pretty active on GitHub, so that's definitely a plus to have on your resume. But as a side note, like I got to know a lot of amazing people thanks to open source. I got in touch with a lot of maintainers. I got in touch with a lot of great projects. And if you have time to spend on open source, I think there is a lot to learn over there. So the reality is that if you don't have work experience and you do have some open source projects, they actually could showcase your skills. So really, if you have some time, please take a look at open source projects and how to contribute, how to start. So on this, I want to mention my podcast because my podcast is all about open source projects, and I interview maintainer and authors of projects. And every time I ask them, "Hey, how people can join your project?" and they're always more than welcome to join new people on their project. So really take a look at that. There are a lot of projects out there that are looking for contributors. And if you just go on GitHub, sometimes there are issues that are marked as a good first issue or help wanted. So you could just grab them and start working over there. I know it's a bit intimidating at the beginning, and it's also a bit complicated to start with if you never did it, but also it takes practice. I remember, like, also for me it was hard to start with, but after it's really a pleasure. I really enjoy doing open source.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Moving ahead, can you pitch some beginners Android projects suggestions? Yeah.
Yeah, so the default answer to this question will be to create a to-do app, like a application that contains like a list of things to do, and you can check mark some and mark them as done. That's doable. If this sounds dumb to you, like that you're not excited in doing this, I will just say try to find a task that you do daily that you want to automatize that an Android app could help you with. And such task could be translated into an Android app. Or try to find an Android app they're using daily and they're not happy with, and try to basically write a clone, if you could call it that, or at least add the feature that you want to this clone. That's something that will drive you forward because you will code something that is definitely useful for you, and then it might also be useful for others. So yeah, my suggestion is try to, like, if you're doing some side projects, try to find something that is first useful for you and that drives you forward, and then maybe others will also find it useful.
So we also have a question in comments. Uh, it says, "Hey sir, how much does DSA and Algo matters in Android development?" Yeah, sir.
Yeah, okay, I was reading it. Okay, so data structure and algorithm. I'm a big fan of them. I would say they are important. So at a first glimpse, you might think that you don't need to know them. Specifically algorithm. Data structure, you would definitely need them. Like you need to know what is a hash map rather than a tree. because you will just use them. Like you will use hash map, lists, arrays daily when you do Android development, and you need to know a little bit the performances of those. Algorithms, it depends on the problem you're doing. Like sometimes you work in complex environments where you need to use them. Other times you don't. I can tell you for sure that the Android SDK, the Android framework underneath uses a lot of algorithm optimizations, for example, for layout traversing, and a lot of other things. But at the same time, is like I think those are great. Those are great topics, and they're worth to learn. But definitely, they're not fundamental for Android development. Like you will never have to write a Dijkstra algorithm implementation by yourself while doing Android because you're probably not needed. And if so, you will use a library that has an implementation for that. So yeah, that's my take on this.
Yeah, hope you get your answer. Moving ahead, uh, what are the benefits of using Kotlin? What's your favorite Kotlin feature?
Okay, so the benefits of using Kotlin, first, I would say it's really readable and it's really, it's a modern language, has a lot of nice feature. Their earlier version of Java were lacking. I really like, and that maybe also answers what's my favorite feature, Kotlin feature, the full interoperability with Java. Like if you have a big Java project, you could basically take one single file and convert it to Kotlin, and that will still work. And you're not forced to create like a separate library. It's really like a pleasure to just start converting things from Java to Kotlin, and also seeing how the size of your code base gets shrinked as soon as you convert to Kotlin. I think that's amazing. So yeah, definitely Kotlin is way more concise, easier to read, easier to follow.
Great answer, sir. Over to you, Naman. Now you can ask.
Yeah. So next question. Yeah. So Nicola, my question to you is, what are the career opportunities that one can see with Kotlin Android development?
Yeah, well, that's a really broad question, so I will answer in a broad way. There are a lot of opportunities. So there are a lot of companies that are hiring specifically for Android developers.
Yeah.
Not necessarily Kotlin, but definitely Kotlin is a plus. I saw in the past job openings that required you to know Kotlin. Like we are looking for an engineer to add inside a team where there are like the language used is Kotlin, so you need to know Kotlin. So definitely take a look into that. So far, anyway, generally Kotlin has been like again a nice to have. Is not a strong requirement.
Okay.
There are also a lot of opportunities to do internships. So if you're in the university environment, I will suggest take a look at that. There are like really a lot of careers they're looking. A lot of companies are looking for openings for interns.
Yeah.
So again, I think that the market offers like still a lot for Android.
Okay, so I guess we have an answer for that question. And next question, please. Yeah. So this question is personally from me. I started my Android development journey with Flutter and Dart, but now in my college they are teaching me Java. So how to choose between Java, Flutter, and Kotlin? Which one to continue with?
So yeah, to
Like
answer to
I
the
have done a little bit of Flutter, little bit of Java, and little bit of Kotlin. How to decide which one to choose now?
well, it really depends on what you want to do. I would say there is no general answer to this. I would say that the fact that in your college are teaching you Java is actually great because Java is still one of the most used language in the industry. And also, I think it's great for learning, like to generally understand how things are working under the hood. So it's definitely worth to know Java.
Okay.
It's a great
So
it's a
you are
great
saying learning Java is always a plus point.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I would not trash Java at all. Like
Okay.
for Android development, you could technically learn only Kotlin and go ahead with Android development, but you will still see that there are like quite a lot of documentation written in Java.
Okay.
So you will still have to understand what the code sort of does. Um, as for the point, Kotlin, Java versus Flutter,
Yeah.
I would say they're both valid. And again, it really depends on what you want to do. I generally suggest to take a look at Dart and Flutter in
Yeah.
general if you want to do fast mobile development, like if you need to have a prototype and if you want to develop an application for both platforms in short time. Um, and there are some use cases also where having Flutter application works well. But at the
Okay.
same time, if you are looking into like bigger applications and you want to work like at bigger companies and bigger projects and so on, you will see that those are basically all native apps.
Okay.
So you
So
would
basically
definitely need,
for
yeah,
bigger industry, industrial size and bigger application use, we should prefer Kotlin over Flutter and Dart.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Also, the other thing is that if you learn only Flutter, your
Yeah.
application will anyway run inside the Android SDK.
Okay.
So you will anyway, like my suggestion is have a strong foundation of Android development, and then you can put Flutter on top.
Okay.
But knowing only Flutter might, um, I mean, might you will lack some of the
Requirements.
some of the things that are like underneath
Okay.
when your Flutter application is running.
Yeah. So that was very informative answer. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nicola. Yeah. So the next question is, why do developers prefer Kotlin over Flutter while Flutter is developed by Google developers only?
Um, well,
For
so
small projects only. Like,
no, I would say it's a mixture of things. Engineers generally are strongly opinionated, I would say. So whenever you, I don't know, embrace a certain technology, people don't want to change so
yeah.
often. So either there is like a group of people that jumps over the train of the new technology and they're super excited, and then there is like a group of people that says like, "Oh, I will never change to that." I personally tried Flutter, and I think it's a great tool. I actually developed some apps with that, and it worked really well. It was super fast for me. But I would say the fact that Flutter is developed by Google, that's regardless like of the technology.
Yeah.
And also the fact that Kotlin is developed by JetBrains is
JetBrains.
actually a great plus in the way that JetBrains is a company that has the foundational goal of developing developer tools like IDEs. So they take Kotlin development really seriously, and they provide a lot of great tools for that.
Yeah.
So I generally think that the environment that is offered for Kotlin is way, way more mature than whatever is offered for Flutter. And also, I really like the Kotlin community. So that's my personal take on that.
Yeah. Thank you. So next question, please. Yeah. So what are the good practice? What are some of the good practices that you will recommend for an Android developer or someone who's developing apps in general?
Yeah. So today we mentioned a lot of them,
Yeah.
like while presenting. I will definitely suggest to take a look at architectures. That's
Okay.
probably one of the most important thing because doing buttons and UIs, it's easy. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you just drag and drop buttons or you copy a layout online. and you manage to find a way to let that work. But having a strong architecture that allows you to write tests, it's something often overlooked. And personally, I also suggest to take a look at tests. Like, you need to learn how to write tests. Personally, I would say that that's one of the few things that the university hasn't given me. Like, I haven't really learned how to write a JUnit test at the university. And that was probably one of the most important things that I should have learned. So if you don't know how to write good tests for Android or for any other tool, any other framework, any other language, then you should definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, thank you. So, so many people focus on competitive programming, and they don't focus on development that much. So, what are your views on that?
Um, so I'm okay. So I would not call myself a competitive programmer, but for example, there was the advent of code in December, and I was doing daily every exercise till the last one. So I personally like sort of this kind of competitions, although I know my skills. I'm not super fast at typing, and I just don't take them so seriously, honestly. But I think they're great for learning. Like, my suggestion would be like, don't take yourself too seriously on this. But it's definitely worth to be like to be up to date on, for example, knowing properly the standard library. Like, the difference between a beginner Kotlin engineer and a good Kotlin engineer is that a good Kotlin engineer knows which library to use and which API to use to do a certain thing. So you don't have to Google everything every time, but you know that there are certain data structure in the standard library, and you can use one rather than another one. And also, I think Kotlin recently has grown a lot in competitive programming. There has been a lot of competitions where Kotlin is used, specifically because Kotlin is really concise and has a great standard library. So it allows you to, it's not at the level of Python, but it allows you to write really compact code. And I remember, like, there are certain like problems, like even on the advent of code, that you could solve with one line in Kotlin, that will obviously not be possible in Java.
Yeah. So, my last question for you
Yeah.
is, what are the responsibilities of an Android infrastructure engineer? How is it like working with Spotify? So, this is a personal question for you only.
Yeah. So the Android infra, it's a little different than like a vanilla Android engineer. And the reason is that basically what I do is I develop tools and libraries for an Android engineer. So this definitely requires you to know, to have a deep understanding of the Android framework and the Android environment, to have a deep understanding of Kotlin and the languages that other engineers are using, and also to have a bit of a mindset shift. So, for example, taking care of build times and which tools to use rather than another. So definitely Android infra, you don't get to do a lot of platform development. Sorry, a lot of feature development, but you get to do a lot of platform development.
Okay.
So this means that you don't place buttons on the screen. You don't create fancy new features, but you basically, like, your end customer is another developer. Like, you create tools that other developers in your company are happy to use. So on this side, I also want to mention that it's a role that is typical of bigger companies. So if you're working at a startup or a small company, you will definitely not have much opportunity to do Android infra. and you should look into moving into bigger organizations, because that's something that comes with having like a bigger number of honored engineers, like we do at Spotify.
Yeah, so thank you. And one more thing, how is it like working at Spotify?
It's awesome.
Yeah,
So I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden. So yeah, I don't know if you're aware, but in winter, Sweden, it's really dark. So that's one of the negative point. But on the other side, the culture is amazing. And the Android community over here is also amazing. So there is a lot to learn. It's a really big project. There is a lot of things to do, and we are looking for people. So if you go on the Spotify career site, you will find like a lot of openings. Yeah, just drop me a message also if you're interested in learning more. I'll be more than happy to provide support and guidance.
yeah. Thank you very much, Nicola. Now, binding up our today's session, I would like to ask you if you want to add anything or give any piece of advice to our audience.
Uh, Let me think. I would say I will reiterate what I said for open source. For me, that's crucial. I know a lot of friends of mine and other great engineers that they don't do open source at all. They just don't care. They say that they don't have time or whatever. But I think it's crucial, and it gives you like a lot of boost, and it teaches you a lot. And it's not just coding. It's not just like, contributing to something. It teaches you how to communicate with others virtually. It teaches you how to be polite, how to present a complex thing in a simple way. I learned a lot out of open source. There is not just the coding front. And if you're in at college and you're learning, you're like in a learning process, I definitely suggest you take a look at open source.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Now, I would like to sign up from today's session. Yeah,
Thank you
hope you
so
had
much.
a great time.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for having me.
Excellent
Yeah,
session, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Bye bye. Bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.